Director Monty Manson, Deputy Director Serena Ortega, Deputy Director Wendy Bolden, Region Chief Dave Fulcher, Deputy Director Nick Schuler. Am I missing anybody who decided not to stand up and be acknowledged? Anyways, this is the executive team of the entire department that supports the office in addition. So thank you guys for being here. We took an opportunity to thank our former state fire marshals, and truly it is an honor to have all of you in this room. I can tell you, and we'll hear from them in a moment. Actually, we'll hear from every of our state fire marshals in a moment. Chief Hoover and Chief Dargan both really wanted to be here, and actually were very disappointed that they had previous engagements. But it is amazing for us to get all of the retired state fire marshals in this room, and so again, acknowledge you. I do want to take an opportunity and thank our employees. We are only as strong as an office, and we have only gotten to this 100-year mark because of our employees. So this is like a church session where we stand up and down. But if those of you are current employees, can you please stand up? Thank you all. We have a lot of retirees from the office as well. We're going to acknowledge everybody. Everybody will get thanked. This is like the Oprah Winfrey Show. When I tell you what's under your seat, you're going to be really excited. But retirees, would you mind standing up so we can acknowledge you as well? Thank you very much. We also are really, I am honored to have two of our labor leaders. We now have two major unions representing the employees of the State Fire Marshal. Jose Sanabria, who represents CSELA, our bargaining unit 7. Deputy State Fire Marshals, Jose, sorry to put you on the spot again back there. And Scott Witt, who is the Vice President for District 9 of Local 2881. We're very proud of our employees and specifically our labor leaders who represent. Our partner departments. We have a lot of agencies from other departments. Maybe I'll skip having you all stand up unless you want to. Okay, I'm getting the nod, yes. But those of you who represent other state agencies, local fire departments, our fire prevention officers, our building officials, we work very, very closely with other government agencies, and your presence here today, really I think shows the support, and it means a lot that you would come for our celebration today. And then lastly, our industry stakeholders, the representatives from our private industry that oftentimes we regulate, but more importantly that we lean on to help drive and help us write and develop the regulations and codes. And so really appreciate all of our regulated stakeholders and our industry partners. So thank you all for being here as well. A lot of thanks. That's what today's going to be all about, I guess. The other exciting thing, and there's a lot of excitement to the last couple of days, but I have this letter right here from Gavin Newsom. He today declared today to be California State Fire Marshal Centennial Day. So not only is it a celebration for us, I think it's a state holiday. So at 5 o'clock you can go home. But I really quickly want to read the letter from our governor acknowledging the hard work that, again, not just the current employees, but everybody plays. So the governor wrote today, the California State Fire Marshal Centennial Day, established by Legislative Act in 1923, the Office of State Fire Marshal has been protecting life and property throughout California for 100 years. Serving as an independent department until its consolidation with the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, CAL FIRE, decades later, the Office of the State Fire Marshal helps to safeguard our communities through a wide variety of fire prevention, engineering, education, and enforcement efforts. These fire safety responsibilities include providing statewide direction for fire prevention within wildland areas, developing and reviewing building standards, regulating hazardous liquid pipelines, and providing training and education for the California Fire Service. So on this 100th anniversary, I urge all Californians to recognize the life-saving work of the Office of State Fire Marshal to protect Californians and to create more wildfire-prepared communities. Sincerely, Governor Gavin Newsom. So again, happy California State Fire Marshal Centennial Day. But again, if we take a moment and just pause and look back, 100 years of saving lives, 100 years of preventing fires, preventing injuries, protecting property, training, innovation, and legacy. That is what we are celebrating today. But I want to take a step back, especially for those who maybe have not been connected with the office in some of the more recent years. There's been a lot of change. I mean, you look around the room, we're at nearly capacity of this room today, and I know there's a bunch of fire marshals here that probably have already scoped out the exits, but we have grown as an office over the years. The office today is made up of 6 programmatic divisions. Our Co-Development and Analysis Division, our Community Wildfire Preparedness and Mitigation, Fire Engineering and Investigations, Fire and Life Safety, State Fire Training, Pipeline Safety Division, in addition to our Support Services Division. So the 7 divisions make up the entire office. But in addition, we have the full integration of administrative and management support from the entire department. And so there are even more people within our department that support the mission of the office than just those in the room. And so again, we really have, in I would even say the last several years, made light years into the merge of the office within CAL FIRE and into that full integration. We've experienced significant growth as an office. Again, you look at the room, there are so many more employees than existed in the office. Even 5 years ago, we are significantly higher. In fact, our Fire and Life Safety Division will soon be over 100 people within that division. Our Wildfire Prevention Division, I always like to say the stat, was 1 person back in 2007 and now is 63 people. But every single one of our divisions have experienced growth in the last several years, which has brought us to 274.5 employees. We have a half-time employee as well, but we've grown to nearly 300 people, and again, that's light years in just the last couple of years. In that, we are managing over $300 million in wildfire prevention grant projects, 1.4 million student hours with 13,000 fire service certifications, over 5,800 miles of hazardous liquid pipelines, over 17,000 fire protection licenses and certifications, over $6 billion right now in construction projects currently being managed, and then lastly, our co-development program, which is small but strong, has been working on more code adoptions than probably within the history of the office. That's kind of a look at where we are today. But as we kind of look towards the future of what to expect, there's a lot of issues that we're going to have to address. Obviously, we have a housing crisis here in California, and how we participate in balancing affordability with fire safety is a unique balance and will be a challenge for us for years to come. Wildfire risk is obviously continuing to be a major focal point of the state, but specifically the office. Again, one of those new responsibilities that moved over under Chief Dargan's tenure, but then has grown since, is our Community Wildfire Mitigation Division, which has grown in centralizing programs, but also increasing that. But we do that focus on wildfire risk with the support of our building industry, with the support of our local officials, our planners, and really work to address the wildfire crisis as a team. Behavioral health and cancer awareness training is paramount right now in the fire service. And as we as an office continue with our development of curriculums and course plans, that's going to be a major focus of supporting our firefighters who are on the front lines dealing with all of these emergencies. We're going to continue to have challenges, adapting to technology, making sure that we make it through this fiscal crisis that we are currently in. In fact, the state is in a $32 billion deficit, and I'm really proud to say that as we have grown as an office during the good years, as we face this major deficit, the governor and the legislature, they understand the role that our office plays, and there have been no reductions to our staff. In fact, we have a budget request for additional staffing in our Fire and Life Safety Division that's continuing to go on while most departments are taking cuts. And so we really need to pause and reflect on that being a major success. But who knows what the future will hold for crisis, and who knows what the future will hold just in general. But I'm confident that our OSFM team will continue to rise to the challenge, and we will continue to do great things just like all of you who came before us have done. Before I wrap up here, I just want to mention the office held a two-day all-hands staff meeting from yesterday to this morning, where we really had an opportunity to learn more about ourselves, learn more about our leadership qualities, empower our employees, and hopefully, as I talked to you, hopefully you all felt that way, and hopefully you took away for those current employees something that is beneficial to you in your role. But more importantly, I really hope that our management team also heard very loud and clear the struggles that you face, but also, how do we communicate better, and how do we work with you in supporting those leadership developments. But I really stressed for our team, and I'll just say it really quick for all of you, especially for our stakeholders, while we work to support our team through communication and trust, we want to continue to strengthen our partnerships with our stakeholders, with our customer service, and our consistency. Those are really my four pillars of expectations for our team: communication, trust, consistency, and customer service. So it really is, and I truly mean this, an absolute honor to lead, and more importantly to support the OSFM team right now as we build on the foundation that many of you over the last 100 years have built, and we are dedicated to continuing to build to make California a safer place, and to focus on the Fire Marshal's mission of fire prevention, engineering, education, and enforcement. So thank you all for being here today. I'm going to turn it now over to our Assistant State Fire Marshal to talk a little bit about the past, and then bring in each one of our former State Fire Marshals for you all to provide to us some of the successes and time that you spent within the office. So, Chief Wendy Collins. Thank you all.
Hi, everybody. This is just really a special moment in time. I know that it took about 100 years to get this far, to get to this place, but much shorter time for me personally. But it's still pretty amazing. A lot of work has gone into this event, and we had a group starting over a year ago, the planning stages. So a big shout out to that group, who have done everything from Centennial badges and challenge coins and pins for the group, helping to set this up, doing some history background and delving into the archives. So lots of work has gone into this event, and having it actually come to fruition is, and being able to stand here and look at everybody is pretty amazing event. So appreciate everyone's participation. History, I looked it up. History can be defined as the study of life and society in the past, in all aspects, in relation to present developments and future hopes. It's a great definition for what we're gathered here today to celebrate. State Fire Marshal's Office was implemented as the result of the study of life and society. We had people dying. We had people losing their homes or losing their businesses, being injured in one way or the other. And that study is what brought about multiple things, but the topic today is the State Fire Marshal's Office, because it's State Fire Marshal's Centennial something Day. Is that what? Here, hold on. California State Fire Marshal Centennial Day. I didn't have to remember it all, because apparently it's a day off.
Next year.
Next year? Okay, perfect. We continue to study, and we have over the last 100 years. We've studied life in society, and we've realized the need for codes and standards that have been put forth and supported by all of the fire departments and the fire marshal organizations. There's been a lot of work to save all the people who don't know that they've been saved by this group. So also a big shout out to all the FPOs and all the prevention officers. Every day, the prevention that we do, it's absolutely impossible to calculate and to really show what we've done. So I've always talked about being able to show the wins and be able to quantify those wins. So I still encourage that anytime we can find a win, let's get it out there. So a couple of the studies in society, just today, just this date in history, we can go back to 1964 where there was a fire started in a church parish hall. There was a Polynesian festival going on at that time, and one of the dancers was in the process of lighting a ceremonial sword, which then caught fire to the white gas that was there. Then the bystander came in, helped out, pushed that pressurized water fire extinguisher on those flames. The dancers, the children that were dancing, took off their grass skirts and were trying to beat the fire down. So a couple of things didn't go quite right. But the reality is that the majority of the people that were injured in that event were caught in a stampede towards the exits. In 1986, there was an explosion and subsequent fire that occurred in an abandoned automotive service station. They were in the process of removing the underground gasoline storage tanks, and somebody came by with an ignition source and had the subsequent explosion. In 1995, on this day, there was a bulk merchandising store that was actually just damaged because it was protected by non-combustible construction, fire alarms, and sprinkler systems. That fire started by accident, caused by a chemical reaction involving pool chemicals and leaking motor oil. And even as recently on this date in 2020, in San Francisco, there was a huge warehouse at the end of Pier 45 that destroyed the fishing gear used to deliver about 2/3 of the city's fresh seafood. There was quite a bit of concern about the fishing season and the fishermen and their livelihood because of that. I think what we need to remember is that we need to continue to build on these experiences that we have over the past 100 years. We can easily talk about the fires that we're seeing due to multiple things. Lithium-ion batteries might be another one that we're definitely neck deep in, trying to figure out how we can regulate those and take that hazard away. Okay, so my notes just went to sleep. I'm glad that's not the same for everybody in this room. Thank you. So we're just going to continue to build on those experiences over the next 100 years. I think that there has been a huge leaps and bounds over the last 100, and I am thrilled to be part of the next, I'd like to say 100 years, but then there's too much hair color would be needed for that. So we'll just go for as long as I can. The number of lives, when we look at everybody in this room and the fire service as a whole, the number of lives that have been positively affected, and even if you just count the people in this room, the positive effect is absolutely immeasurable. There is so much gratitude, at least from me, so much gratitude should be extended to you all for the job that you do, and you protect people who live, work, and visit in this state. So thank you all for that. Along the walls, the far wall over here is a timeline of our office, as well as some interesting fires that have come to make us who we are. Now, it starts out a little long, starts off at the Hammurabi's Code, which is the first written code. It is a BC number. So, and it goes forward to this centennial celebration. So I encourage everyone to take a look at that written timeline, or you can hang around for the 2-hour PowerPoint that will also be rolling on the screens here. So if you really don't have anything else going on, you can absolutely stay. I just want to finish up. There's a lot of people that are in this room that have been an absolute mentor to me. And I'm hoping that I can thank them and their efforts by being like them and being a good mentor and someone that people know that they can count on for good information and maybe something goofy, but good information nonetheless. So I'm going to turn this back over to Chief Hostler, and thank you all for coming, and enjoy the day.
Thank you, Chief. And Chief? Chief Phil Favreau, would you like to come up and say some words, sir?
I don't have a computer. I have a piece of paper. That's the way we did it in my day. Before I say anything, I just want to recognize one person who's here today, who was a former deputy director of CAL FIRE, and that's my son, Tony Favreau. I also want to thank the creator of the logo for the Fire Marshal's office by putting the Golden Gate Bridge on that label in honor of me. So thank you for that. 48 years ago, I was appointed State Fire Marshal by Jerry Brown. I ran into the most serious opposition that anyone for this office has ever run into. Virtually every fire agency in the state of California didn't want me. And they said I had no experience. They said I was a political appointee, which I was. There was one exception, and then that was, at the time, the Federated Firefighters of California, now the California Professional Firefighters. They stood by me. I met with them after I was appointed, and they were the only ones that stood by me in the first few years of my administration. So I thank them for that. I also had the good fortune of running into a staff at the Fire Marshal's office that was extremely competent, extremely supportive, and they did not oppose, at least I didn't know it if they did, my appointment. We got along well. One man in particular, actually two men, but one man in particular virtually ran the office from a practical standpoint, and his name was Don Truitt. And Don passed away recently, but he was one of the best, if not the best man in the fire service that I have ever met. And I really think he was a great guy. The other was Ed Seitz, who started the process of making us more public. Up to that point, and I think if you notice the pictures on the bar, before Jim McMullen became fire marshal, there were virtually no pictures. The whole process started with Ed making us more publicly noticed, and it really helped. I think we started getting the recognition that we deserved. I remember when I was before the Senate for confirmation, because as department directors at that time we had to go for Senate confirmation. One senator, the first senator to ask me a question, looked at me and said, "Sir, what is your position on fireworks?" And I really was at a loss to what to say. I think I said something like, "Well, I'll observe the law." And then I thought to myself, I don't have a position on fireworks other than going to Chinatown in San Francisco and buying them. At another hearing, I was being asked about fire loss, and I made the mistake of comparing fire loss to losses in the Vietnam era. Lou Papin was an assemblyman on the committee, and he took off after me like no one ever has. He ran me up one side and down the other. I was so uncomfortable, I wanted to run out of there and go hide. I got in a discussion with him, and it wasn't very pleasant. So I left with my tail between my legs and went back to the office. An hour later, the phone rang, and when I answered it, there was a woman on the line that said, "Sir, I work for Assemblyman Lou Papin. He'd like to speak to you." I said, "Oh boy, this is going to be something." So he came on the line and he said, "Sorry what we did in that assembly room." He said, "But I have tender feelings about Vietnam because I was there." And I said, "I apologize. We shouldn't have gotten into the discussion we did." He said, "Let's have lunch." I went to lunch with him. We had a long discussion, and he became one of the most supportive members of the Assembly that we ever had. So good things come from sometime losing one's temper. If you noticed on the table there around that bar, there were very few pictures of the fire marshal's office between McMullen and Coleman. Excuse me. Yeah. Well, anyway, I forget now. I'm getting old. No pictures of us, put it that way. And the reason was that at some point, all those pictures burned in the famous fire that we had. You didn't mention that when you were talking about fires. Yes, trying to forget. I got more phone calls from friends of mine wanting to know what the hell kind of a job was I doing when I couldn't even prevent a fire in my own office. Anyway, a couple of other things, though, that I find that were really interesting. One of the things that I'm most proud of was the high-rise regulations that we were able to pass during my tenure. And the people that helped with that from all over the state of California working together really made a difference. And I'm very proud of the high-rise regulations that really led the nation at that point in getting things done. The other thing that was that I thought was interesting, and it's in the press today a bit, although not in the same way, was the regulations or the legislation that was being enacted to require catalytic converters in place of conventional exhaust systems. The city and/or county of LA was in opposition to this, particularly one member whose name I can't remember at this point. But I had a hearing with that body in LA, and he demanded that we test catalytic converters to ensure that they were safe, because he was convinced that they were not safe, that they were a fire hazard. We did it, and we were able to show that a conventional muffler system was far more likely to cause a fire than a catalytic converter. He removed his opposition, and the bill went into effect, and of course now catalytic converters are the state of the art throughout the country and are being stolen every night. So just a couple of other things. I had the good fortune of being a department director, as I mentioned earlier, and I worked for Rose Bird, whom I had a great deal of respect for. She went on to become the Chief Justice and had some difficulty retaining her position, but I thought she was a wonderful woman. But one of the things that she instilled in me was the need to broaden the base of the Fire Marshal's office, which at that time was all male and all white. We were able to start a transition at that point, and I'm happy to say that one of the two first women who became Deputy State Fire Marshals is here today. That's Diane Ahrens. I think before we're somewhere out there. Yeah. There she is. And the other was Nancy Wolf, who wasn't able to be here today. But I think that that was something I was really proud of, that we were able to make some changes in that regard. One point about something that's interesting here today is that the consolidation of the Fire Marshal's office with CAL FIRE, and not to take any credit away from Ron Coleman, who made that work, is that we had put together a consolidation proposal to take effect in the last days of my tenure as fire marshal. Time ran out and we didn't get to do it. The only difference was that my proposal was that CAL FIRE become a part of the fire marshal's office. Didn't happen. Anyway. Finally, two things. The California Firefighters Joint Apprenticeship Committee, along with Cal Professional Firefighters, we were able to get that instigated, and today I believe it's the 40th? Yeah. And that happened, and I'm proud of that as well. One other thing, and I'm not being facetious when I say this. The arson unit of the Fire Marshal's office were peace officers under some section of the code that I don't remember anymore, which entitled them to carry weapons. And as much as I hate to cast dispersions on this, they would walk around the office with .45 caliber guns on their hips all the time. And I'm not a gun fan, but it made me nervous, that all these guns. And so I told them to get rid of the guns, put them in their office desks, keep the guns, but don't wear them. Talk about opposition to that. Oof, that was another difficult one. Anyway. Again, just recently I was talking to Jerry Brown, and he asked me what I thought of my tenure as fire marshal. And I said, it was fun. And he looked at me and said, being governor was fun too. So, again, thanks again for recognizing me with the Golden Gate Bridge on your logo, and thanks for having me.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Chief. And I neglected, Chief served from 1975 to 1983. Interesting times. Next, Chief McMullen, which served from 1985 to 1990. Chief? Here? Yep.
1992.
Oh, I apologize, 92.
It's like it was yesterday. Thank you. Hello, all. It is great to be here and to see a lot of old faces that I know that are now still looking young, and a lot of the young people that are looking great. So thank you all for support of the Office of the State Fire Marshal. And like Chief Favreau just said, this is an office that is well known. And I'm going to add a dimension to that. And that is the National Association of State Fire Marshals. There was no such thing when I took office. And I want to call another state fire marshal in New York or somewhere that would have similar problems to California, but I don't know who to call. I sure couldn't call the Sacramento fire chief and say, what do you do on this case? He wouldn't know. So I called New York, and I called Florida, and I called some other states, and guess what? We formed the embryo that's now the National Association of State Fire Marshals. We had our first meeting here in California in Asilomar, and we have had many, many subsequent meetings, a big, viable organization now, and I'm proud to say I was the founding president of that organization. Thank you. To give you an example, we had a meeting one time back east in a big state, and we had it in a tent because it was chilly back there, as you might imagine. And in this big state, we have a tent, and we're setting up at the podium like this. And guess what's right above us? The logo of the California State Fire Marshal Approved 10. And I said, we move throughout the United States. And you know what they said? You're right. Anything that's approved in California, we accept in our state because we don't do that, and you guys do. And so that's just one example of the respect you all have from the rest of the state people in fire prevention. The other thing that we did is accentuate one of the things that we just heard about, and that was pub ed. We believed, just like Phil said, we believed in public education, and we fostered public education. Those of you, when I say we, because it was our team, it wasn't just me, it was the whole team. We did it together. And we held a symposium, and some of you may remember the symposiums down in Asilomar. We'd have an annual symposium on a topic, and one of the topics was public education. And through our Public Education Advisory Committee, we decided we needed to do something about residential fire sprinklers. Folks are dying in their homes. We need to do something about it. We regulate the dickens out of all these other buildings. We don't regulate single-family residences. A person's home is his castle. We've always heard that. But they're dying in those homes. So we came up with some ideas on, well, let's educate the public on what to do. And voila, the residential fire sprinkler trailer came about. And some of you may remember that old guy, and it may still be around. I don't know, is it still around today? No? Well, it was fun. We'd build a fire inside, and the heads would go off, and you're hoping it worked, and you're hoping the door would work when you came out. And I was in it a couple of times. And I remember actress Shirley Jones and I were in it once, and she was terrified, as she might have been. Fortunately, because she lost her husband in a fire, a residential fire, she was instrumental in helping us with that. But that trailer was going around throughout the state of California promoting residential sprinklers. In addition, even before clock changer battery, we had to do something about batteries being dead in smoke detectors. So we had signs up. Some of you may remember those signs. Is yours working? Smoke detectors save lives. We had billboards donated throughout the state. And then another dimension was we had declared war on arson. And Phil just mentioned the folks running around with sidearms. Well, we had an arson and bomb division, yep, but we declared war on arson bigger than our office, bigger than CAL FIRE, bigger than all of us together was the state of California. And so we had a joint press conference with Los Angeles and San Francisco and all the other major cities, and we had press conferences, and we declared war on arson, and we put energy toward doing something. So guess what we did? We had another symposium on arson. And during that symposium, one of our speakers had to leave. And this speaker was from San Diego. Wasn't a fire service member, but it was another person involved in the field. And guess what? Someone had bombed their car. And so, yeah, it really caught everyone's attention. Yes, we do have an arson problem. And we formed a special task force, Governor's Special Arson Task Force, and we were liaison to all the other local task forces, county task forces and area task forces, and tried to organize and share knowledge and so forth. One of the other things that we did that we really liked was master planning. Before I was there, I don't recall we ever had a master plan for at least no one remembered one. So we formed, and guess what? We wrote a master plan for the State Fire Marshal's office and guess what we did? Another symposium on master planning so other fire departments would have master plans and not just day-to-day planning, but master planning. And Chief Favreau mentioned CalJack, and CalJack was a great organization and still is, I believe. And CalJack, we really promoted, and Fire Marshal was the management team member along with California professional firefighters, and together we did some things that we needed to do in those days. And that was make opportunities for underrepresented groups, for minorities and women to get into the fire service. And we learned, women have been in the fire service for 10 years now. But guess what? Their boots don't fit. The clothes were built for males. And we promoted getting proper uniforms and proper safety gear for women to promote females in the fire service. Thank you. And the other thing I remember well, and you all may have heard about this some years ago, we had a train get out of control coming down the Cajon Pass in San Bernardino County and slammed into one of our pipelines down in San Bernardino City and caused a major, major issue. We had a pipeline safety division that had just been formed, and that pipeline division, I understand, is going great steams now, and I'm very proud of our pipeline division, and they handled that incident.
Thanks, Chief.
And then lastly, I want to recognize another thing that occurred. Unfortunately, we had an actor carrying 2 children on a film set and running. And he was filming a film called Twilight the Movie. And he was in a soldier's uniform representing Vietnam, and these were Vietnamese children. And a helicopter was blown off course. And unfortunately, they were both killed. And so guess what happened? We formed the State Fire Marshal's Film Industry Unit. I understand it's still going strong now, maybe a new name, but how about the film industry people standing up and being recognized? I saw you back there. So people said, well, what in the world is the fire marshal getting involved in a helicopter crash? Guess what blew it off course? A pot that was caused from explosions. The mortars you see in the movies, you don't come out over the air like they do in the military. They come out of the ground. And it blew the helicopter off course. And tighter regulation was needed for those pyrotechnics and other fire devices. So those are a few of the little rundowns we had during our time. I'd like to recognize the people that were in the office during my administration. Would you please stand up so I can recognize you? This was the team that made it happen. Thank you all very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Chief. Can you all hear us in the back? No? How about now? Now we got feedback. All right, Chiefs, we need to speak up a little bit or get closer to the mic if we can. Now it's my honor to introduce... I'm here to prevent. Chief Coleman, and from 1992 to 99, Our website says 1990, but I was corrected. So, but Chief Coleman.
Thank you very much for this. Oh my God, I didn't realize there were this many people here. I've been sitting up in the front row and reflecting a little bit on my experience as State Fire Marshal, and there's a word that I would like to have you all reflect on for just a few minutes, and that is ubiquitous. Ubiquitous meaning you're everywhere. The State Fire Marshal's office was sorry, I'm a little weary of my head.
Chief, you want to sit?
No, I'm going to feed it. I'll do it. There we go. Oh, that's better.
Good. Chief, you want to sit right here in front?
Sitting would be better.
Okay.
I apologize for my infirmity right now, but I'm suffering a little bit from diabetes reform and not doing all that well anymore. But I do have one story to tell about the Fire Marshal's office, and it involves the word ubiquitous. We are everywhere. And we pause to relate some people in the city of Ventura. I went down, there was a ex-fire marshal at the time, was the fire chief in Ventura. In Ventura, I got there about midnight one night to have a meeting the following day with the FPOs. And I saw the FPOs group here, so some of them may remember this meeting. But the fact of the matter is, as I went up to the desk, the girl at the desk told me I was too late to check into my room. I said, "Do you know who I am?" She didn't care. I said, I would like to have a room. And she said, well, we only have one left, but it's out of service right now. I said, well, what's wrong with it? She said, well, the smoke detector is broken. And I said, I'm not staying in that room. And she said, well, why not? I said, well, because the weapon or the smoke detector has to be operational in a room that's being rented like that. So I went back to the room, opened the door, and here's the smoke detector hanging in the hallway by about 2 wires. So I walked back up to the front desk, knocked on the door, and I said, I'm not staying in that room. You have to give me another one. And she said, who do you think you are, the fire marshal? I said, as a matter of fact, I am. Her boss come walking out of the back room. I can't believe she said that. At any rate, all kidding aside, this is such a pleasure having a chance to be here today, to see all of you and to recognize all of you for all the past services of the Fire Marshal's Office. Many of you may not remember this, but the fire chief of LA City Fire Department was one of the first advocates of having a fire marshal's office in California in 1920s. And today we look at it as a nationwide recognized and internationally recognized fire protection agency of no equal. My personal belief is getting more and more difficult to communicate what my intent is. So I'm going to keep my remarks very short so you guys won't be bored silly. At any rate, my accomplishments during the year as a fire marshal are reflected the same as many of you in this room. We had fire code development issues during that time. We had training programs that were popularized, and Phil Favreau, if I remember, they may not remember this, Phil, but at one point, state fire training was the State Department of Education. They canceled the budget for state fire training, and Phil Favreau brought him on with no general fund allocation. And unfortunately, we've been fighting that battle ever since. But my personal experience was working with the statewide Training Education Advisory Council, state, was known as STAKE, in the accreditation concept, which got the community colleges and the local fire departments to begin to reflect positively on working together with state fire training. There were a lot of other things. I attribute my years to being unique in the sense that I was one of the few individuals who saw the wisdom to doing the coordination of fire departments and coordination of state fire training into accredited academies, which is now one of our most powerful groups when it comes to determining the curriculum for all future fire chiefs. The last thing I'm probably going to say, and I apologize once again for my unsteadiness of communications, but I know a hell of a lot of you people. And I lasted about 50 years also, and as I look back on it, my career was a lot of fun also. So you can tell Governor Brown that. My personal experience was also part of the firestorm of the 1990s when I was involved with Governor Wilson. And he asked me one night, he said, whatever time we go somewhere, there's a fireman here. That's because, I said, there's a whole bunch of us. And we're all here to do the same job. Anyway, I appreciate having the opportunity to speak to you, and I apologize for my lack of ability to coordinate my mouth and my brain at the same time. It's not working very well. At any rate, thank you very much for having the opportunity.
We'll get you moved. We'll get you moved.
Can I borrow?
Chief, my wife blames me all the time that I don't have the ability to speak my mind. And it wouldn't matter if I did, right, dear? Yes. It's my honor, Chief Grijalva, 2004 to 2007.
Be heard without a microphone, but you know.
Copy that.
Well, it's a pleasure for me to be here and an honor. And first of all, let me extend my congratulations to Chief Berlant. and the entire staff of the State Fire Marshal's Office for this memorable event. We're just really grateful and thankful you put this together. I have an interesting story in how I came to the State Fire Marshal's Office. It was unplanned and kind of reluctant. I had spent 30 years already in local government. I had been the fire chief of the city of Palo Alto for 10 years. I was the president for the fire chiefs for the League of California Cities, and I was 5 months away from retirement. And I was looking forward to it. My wife was looking forward to it. And then this little thing called the Code Wars happened. The state decided to adopt NFPA as the building and fire codes and go away from ICC. And I had been a code geek in my life. I had been a fire marshal for 5 years for the city of Sunnyvale, actively involved with developing codes and in the code process. Gail Bate actually was the one who was doing most of the work, but I had some good mentors in my career, and Gail certainly was among them, as was Ronnie Coleman. But so after Ronnie adopted the first residential sprinkler requirements in Southern California, Sunnyvale adopted them in 1985, I think we did, to require every new home to be installed with residential sprinklers. Got sidetracked. Anyway, the Code Wars occurred, and it became so important to me that after the recall and Governor Schwarzenegger come into office, I was asked by a number of people who had heard me speak at these code meetings, would you be interested in being state fire marshal? And I said, well, I'm actually thinking about retiring. And then I actually looked at the pay scale, and I said, well, that's about $70,000 a year less than I'm making right now. And so I had obviously a long conversation with my family, with my wife, and we agreed that I could go to do this job for 2 years. I was a little skeptical about it to the point where I went to my city manager and city council, and my city council was gracious enough to pass an ordinance putting me on a 1-year unpaid sabbatical. I could go be state fire marshal for a year, and if I didn't like it, I could come back and retire. So, but this office has that magic. You know, you get there and you love the job, you love the mission, and you love the people that you're working with. And that's what I found when I came to the office. Although one of the things I was to do was to bring peace after the Code Wars, because there had been a lot of turmoil. The fire prevention officers in Northern and Southern California were unhappy with the office of the state fire marshal, Cal chiefs, the unions, just a lot of turmoil going on. And I thought it was my place to try to bring peace among all those different organizations. And so first and foremost, I think my administration was about people, was trying to find the right people for the right job. Because I had learned in 30 years and 10 years of being a chief that you surround yourself with people smarter than you, and then you support the hell out of them. That's a chief's job. And that's what I tried to do as a state fire marshal. I do have to mention a few people, but first let me do the same thing the other chief did and ask if anybody was in the state fire marshal's office during my administration, will you please stand and be recognized? Because your success is only with the people that you work with. And I am going to mention a few of the people who I consider to be key advisors to me and helped me be successful in the office of the state fire marshal. One of those obviously was Kate Dargan, who I brought in as the assistant state fire marshal from, she was a Napa County fire marshal. She brought in Tanya Hoover to support her. Then we had Mike Richwine that we put in charge of state fire training, which wasn't in the state fire marshal's office when I got there, by the way. When I got to the office, there was 83 people in the office. State fire training, ABI were part of CDF and were not part of the state fire marshal's office at the time. So Mike Richwine, Dee Tokamitsu, Kevin Reinertson, Ethan Foote, Vicky Sakamoto, Ben Ho, and Hugh Council were among the people who I turned to help me understand the state process, the history of the office, and to help me be successful. And I wouldn't have been successful without these people and the other staff that were present. Secondly, I thought my time in the job was about building relationships and rebuilding the credibility of the office of the state fire marshal. So we spent a lot of our times with our stakeholders. That included Cal chiefs, CBIA, CalBO, and the various industry leaders who participated in the State Fire Marshal's process. We worked on our internal relationships with Unit 7, the union, and also with 2881, the stronger union of the two groups that were very powerful and still are powerful today in California. So I try to spend a lot of time building relationships with those groups, as well as with other state agencies. I spent a lot of time meeting with directors of other state agencies who we did business with. I didn't want to go into their office for the first time with a problem. I wanted to meet them first under good conditions, as well as meeting with members of the state legislature as well as the governor's office, building a relationship with Dan Dunmoyer, Cabinet Secretary Susan Kennedy, Governor's Chief of Staff, and Governor Schwarzenegger himself. I also thought that our group was an opportunity to bring about a vision for the future. When I first walked into the office, I talked to Rose, and I said, can I get a copy of the strategic plan, the work plan, whatever? And there was nothing there for me to look at. There was a budget. That was pretty much it. So we decided that we needed to put together a vision for the future, but a vision put together by engaging our leaders with our stakeholders. It was also about speaking truth to power, making sure that what we needed, we went after. And that was my job, was to get the budget, to build the relationships in the governor's office, and to make sure that those resources would flow into our office. Although some of my best influence with the State Fire Marshal's office came later when I became director. And as director, I had more influence in helping the State Fire Marshal's office than I did when I was the State Fire Marshal, because a lot of those things were part of CDF. And so I served as director and State Fire Marshal for nearly a year combined before Kate was appointed to replace me as a State Fire Marshal. But Kate and I worked as partners. Most of you know we worked very closely together in making changes throughout the department, not just within the State Fire Marshal's office, but organizationally within then CDF. Some of the significant changes that include, well, we reversed the decision of the NFPA codes over ICC. We returned the state fire training to the Office of the State Fire Marshal. We returned ABI back to the State Fire Marshal's office. We renamed and rebranded CDF to CAL FIRE, working closely with 2881 and every division within the organization as we developed that process to design the patch and to put out our mission as an organization. We made sure that the patch included the gold California seal that represented the Office of the State Fire Marshal very prominently in the new CAL FIRE patch. We put State Fire Marshal deputies into the same uniforms as suppression personnel, and we brought CDF wildland prevention programs into the State Fire Marshal's office, which has grown tremendously. We developed and adopted Chapter 7A of the California Building Code to address how homes would be built and survive wildfires. We increased defensible space from 50 to 100 feet, and we began the process for the adoption of residential fire sprinklers statewide, which I thought happened under Tanya Davis, yes. But we started that process back then. And finally, it was about preparing the next generation of leaders. We spent a lot of time training the leadership in our organization about decision-making processes and made sure that our leaders always looked at the impact of their decisions. And some of you who were there with me remember, don't come in the chief's office unless you know what's the legal impact, what's the operational impact, what's the financial impact, what's the labor impact, what's the union going to say, what's the political impact, and what's the social impact, what's the community, how is the community going to accept that? So they knew, don't come in my office asking for something if you don't have answers to all those questions. And finally and foremost, I think what we wanted to establish in the organization was you didn't have to have gold stars or gold bars to be a leader. Every person in this office is a leader. And you go out there and you represent the organization with other state agencies, with local government, and you are leaders that carry forward the message of the Office of the State Fire Marshal. So my challenge to you is to be leaders, but to be leaders understanding that being a leader means caring more about others than yourself. Don't go out there with your self-interest. Go out there trying to find a solution and listen to your stakeholders, whether it be labor, whether it be industry, or whether it be local government or other state agencies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. So I have a faux pas that I made. I announced Chief Dargan, and I forgot to call her Chief, so bad on me. I believe we have a video from Chief Dargan. Where's my control person? We're working on it. Okay, I'm going to stand up here and... No, that's horrible. No. You can't unsee that. Okay, I think.
And here's her message to us.
Hi everyone, it's Kate Dargan, State Fire Marshal of California, or today, because it's a celebration of our centennial, one of the several past State Fire Marshals of California that we've invited here. And I'm really sorry that I can't be there to join you today. I'm out of time to get here. But Chief Daniel Rowan asked me to share with you some of my experiences and thoughts on being State Fire Marshal, and so I'm here today to so that was my tenure between assistant and state fire marshal. And the people, really the wonderful folks that I worked with very closely at the time, of course, were Chief Ruben Grijalva. I think he's here with you today. Tanya Hoover, Chief Tanya Hoover, who has gone on to do wonderful things. I'm so proud of Tanya. She's amazing what she's accomplished. And of course, Chief Mike Richwine, whom I'm hoping is here with you today. Mike was the state fire training director when I came on, and he went on to do awesome things as well. And then some folks that probably aren't with us today, certainly Dee Tokamitsu, I doubt that she's able to get out. And then Sherry Habone, who is my executive assistant, who has passed. So I just want to honor those folks who are really important to me and part of that inner team that really helped me be successful as a state fire marshal. So I'm proud of a couple of things, and that's my grandson Nico, so I'm sorry we're including him today, though. He's excited about this as well. I was the first woman state fire marshal of California, and that's a fact that I'm really proud about. I was also the first one that came out of CAL FIRE, which at its time was a little controversial. People weren't sure if I had the passion for fire prevention, local fire service, but I think that I did them proud. Being a CAL FIRE state fire marshal, but also servicing local government. And so some of the things that I really wanted to focus on that I think that were accomplishments in my time, I was a champion for planning, prevention, and mitigation. I pounded those desks many times about the importance of those things for CAL FIRE and the integration of the State Fire Marshal's Office with CAL FIRE and how we had to adopt those as central core tenets of our CAL FIRE philosophy. And I'm seeing that play out today in many ways. I'm really proud of what CAL FIRE has accomplished with the State Fire Marshal's Office leading in this prevention, planning, and mitigation. So things that I worked on in my tenure, the fire hazards, that first rollout of the digital ones, the state fire plan, fire planning legislation. We set the groundwork with some of the introducing ground laying legislation for our fire planning and land use planning units today. Certainly the adoption of the residential sprinklers, which was Tanya's success, but helping lift that in the years that I was in my seat. The ICC code adoption, which was a huge deal for California. And of course, the integration of uniforms, the CAL FIRE uniforms in brass, and the ability to kind of disappear the boundaries between the State Fire Marshal's Office and CAL FIRE and start allowing for a little bit more back and forth. So those are all things that I count as accomplishments in my time. And lastly, I think what I learned the most, taught by Ruben, echoed by others, it's something I teach again today, which is the power of relationships is what changes our world. And so whether it's the building industry, the sprinkler community, the environmental community, our firefighting community, our civilian, just developing the relationships with people and building trust, and then slowly making changes. I guess that's one of the biggest lessons I learned, and I hope that's still a big cultural core for the State Fire Marshal's Office. So to all of you, my thanks. I hope you have a great day. My heart's with you. Thank you.
Just some stats. Kicking things. Okay. Chief Tanya Hoover, 2009 to 2016. Unfortunately, I did not get to serve under Chief. Here we go. Read it like Tanya. That's scary. I am truly proud to have served California and the California Fire Service as the SFM. It has been and always will be a highlight of my career. Chief Tanya Hoover, current Deputy Fire Administrator, U.S. Fire Administration. So as we do well in our office, we adapt and overcome. One of my mentors, and actually helped hire me into my position, Chief Matheson, from 2017 to 2018.
Thank you, sir. Who put Vaseline up here? What's going on? Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I am extremely thrilled to see all these familiar faces and a lot of new faces. I come from a few miles away from here these days. I relocated my home base to the state of Florida. I think there's a few thunderstorms going on over my house right now, but at any rate, whenever I get a chance to come back out to California to visit with family and friends, and particularly my fire service family and friends, I'm going to jump on that opportunity. So thank you again for the invitation and reaching out to me on that. Before I get into any of some of my background here, and I'll try hard not to bore you with that, because a lot of you know me and a lot of you know a little too much about me. So we'll just leave it at that. But I do want to mention that between Tanya and me, Chief Richwine was the acting state fire marshal for that period of time. And it was a very interesting period of time because I had spent most of my career as a local government fire marshal, about 26 plus years with a fire district right here. It's now called Sac Metro, but back in the day it was called American River Fire District. That's actually when I met Diana back there on some there she is right there, back in 1986, doing a joint convalescent home inspection. But yeah, worked in this area. I was a fire marshal for the city of Roseville for 14 years. Had a blast doing that. Had a blast helping to basically double the size of a city during that time. And then I tried. Then I went and worked for NFPA for a short period of time, and then I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to try some different things other than the fire service for a little while. And then a couple of my colleagues and friends from CAL FIRE called me one day and said, hey, we know you don't want to work in the fire service right now, but we got an idea. So that they sucked me back in. And so I came to work for CAL FIRE and doing some information communications work. So they said, hey, we got this little thing called the fire prevention fee. We'd like to help you work, or have you help us work on some public relations on that. It's not a big issue, no big deal. You're going to rock it. Yeah, right. Anybody who has not heard about the fire prevention fee? Okay, y'all know what I'm talking about. Yeah, so came in, helped a little bit, probably made some big mistakes on that one. But, and then they came in to me and said, hey, we want to stand up the public education program statewide. Would you be willing to do that? I'm like, for crying out loud, I haven't finished this job yet. So yeah, okay, I'll do that. So we did that for a little period of time. And then somebody called me and said, hey, we need a chief of state fire training over in the fire marshal's office. I'm like, never been a training chief. How does that work? It's okay. You got this handled. So I ended up going over to the fire marshal's office and working for Chief Richwine. And for those of you that you don't know, Mike and I go way back. I feel like I've worked for the state fire marshal's office my entire career. Because from way back in the day, is that Manny? Manny Muniz back here? No. I'm seeing faces from the past. Squirrel. Shit, I forgot what I was talking about. Yeah, state fire training. So Mike and I go way back, and I have interacted with the fire marshal's office on a lot of different levels as a local person, whether it's coming in and working on a committee, worked with Kate and Tanya with the residential sprinkler projects, bunch of things. So it's like, I feel like I'm always in the office anyway, so I may as well just work here, right? And Mike even helped me out at the local level on many occasions. So we've had a very good partnership over the years. And so it was a great opportunity to come in, learn state fire training. We had an excellent staff that was running things, and we just needed to kind of kick things up a notch and try to get more support for that, whether it was full-time staff like Chris and others, all of our retired annuitants. I think I thought I saw Kevin in here somewhere. There he is, Kevin. We could not have done it without them. And so that was a wonderful experience. But I only got to do it for a few months, because then someone tapped my shoulder after Tanya retired and said, hey, what do you think about being the state fire marshal? Well, like Ruben over here, I was a few months away from retirement. I'm like, really? Really? Okay. I can do it for a couple of years, right? So we went through that long process, and you know, Mike and I worked very closely as we started making that transition. And one of the things I realized was we needed to put a little effort into kind of shoring up our foundation. And what I mean by foundation is our people. We need more people, right? We need excellent people. We need to be able to compete with our market out there. And we had I think it was a 40% vacancy rate when I began as the state fire marshal. And I don't know how you can possibly be expected to fulfill your mission, all of those statutory obligations that we have, when you only got 60% of what you need, and then some. And so we began this process. So, like Chief Favreau here, I too was appointed by Jerry Brown, his second time around, on my 50th birthday, which was when I was planning on retiring. But it's all good. You know, I wouldn't change a thing. We had a blast. And really, what I would not want to focus on in my comments today is we got a lot of cool stuff done, okay? A lot of you heard me say that at a lot of meetings when I was trying to poach a lot of you to come work with us. But we did do a lot of cool things along the way. But one of the things that I felt we needed to really focus on was the internal side of the office and filling that gap, that 40% employee gap, and do what we need to do, or find out why is it? Why don't we have people applying for our jobs? And one of the things I realized is and Chief McMullen probably doesn't remember this, because I barely do, but back in the 80s, we, at the local level, had people leaving to go to the state fire marshal's office. In my own department, two of my colleagues and friends, Carol Jordan, who I think is here today. I know she is. I talked to her earlier. Hi, Carol. Is Mike Tanaka here today? Mikey, there he is. Those two individuals, we worked together, the American River Fire District, and then they decided to take off and go work at the state fire marshal's office because that was the cool place to work, right? Better pay, better benefits. It was it always has been a really cool organization, but that's what was going on. Well, right after Mike left, I decided, you know what, I'm going to put my name in the process. And I got as far as Chief McMullen's office for the chief's interview. And then he looked at me and said, hell no. No, we had a discussion about, okay, where might I work? And that was back in the day where we had regional offices. And so Chief McMullen said, well, you'll likely start out either in West Covina or San Leandro, not Sacramento. And I'm thinking, But also what was happening at the same time is my fire department actually promoted me to a different position. And so long story short, I ended up staying where I was. And then about 30 years later, guess where I was? Here, right? And so life is funny. And somebody mentioned, I know Kate mentioned it, Ruben mentioned it, relationships. If you haven't figured out in your career at this point that probably the most important aspect of your time within the fire service will be your ability to build and foster relationships with everybody that you come in contact with, whether it's your coworkers, whether it's our stakeholders, our fire prevention officers, building officials, all of the various industries that we deal with. You have to have good working relationships. Otherwise, you don't get anything accomplished, right? Nobody wins if you don't have good relationships. And so we set out to try to fix some of our systemic issues when in the hiring, the recruitment, and the retention world. And I won't bore you with the details, but sometimes government can be its own worst enemy. And so we found that we had some bureaucracies that we needed to work on and fine-tune in the hiring world. So where in the past it might take up to or maybe even more than a year to try to get a new deputy state fire marshal on board through the background investigation process and all of the exams and so forth that you have to go through, we were able to, with the support of our entire organization, can I tell you how much time our executive staff, Chief Berenson, Chief Pimlott, everybody sitting here up front, our HR folks, our budget folks, everybody trying to help us solve our issues. And so we started doing some more innovative things. I know myself and my staff did a lot of beating of the bushes out there in the fire service at every meeting, handing out recruitment cards. And I wasn't too proud to try to steal somebody from another organization. And so within the first year, we cut that vacancy rate in half. We were able to we didn't get the raise for the deputies that I had asked for, but we got something. It was a step in the right direction. And so we were able to get pay up. We were able to start getting more interest. We were able to get that hiring process time down to a more reasonable time frame. And we started seeing more people coming in and joining the team. And one thing I would ask is, everybody in this room who I swore in during my short 2 years in that position, please stand up. Anybody? Oh, we got a few. Okay. I will tell you, thank you. I will tell you that was my favorite part of the job. Having that opportunity to welcome you all to the team and going through that swearing-in process, and providing the support as best I could to help you be successful in your new roles. So that was kind of, I knew that my time with the Fire Marshal's office was likely going to be somewhat short because I came in halfway through Governor Brown's final term, and one never knows when there's the change of the guard and you have to go through a reappointment process, how that was going to work out. And at the end of the day, or towards the end of my time, I realized, my wife realized it was time for me to move on to the next chapter. But in that short period of time, I think we were able to strengthen some relationships with a lot of our stakeholders. I know I have a lot of fire prevention officer friends, Cal Chiefs friends in the audience. We all go way back, and I wanted to make sure that they felt like they were integrated within the office and had a role. Some of them pestered me a little bit. Jessica. But that's an example of local government, and again, my background with local government, I think helped me have a perspective of what it was like being at that local level and what our needs were. And I knew what it was like working with the State Fire Marshal's office as a local fire marshal, and the great support and the great asset they can bring. A good example is a long time ago, the arson and bomb unit you had Larry Navarrete, Joe Conifel, Greg Smith. I mean, the list goes on. These are the greats, right? How many did we have when I came in? One. Brian. And Brian was carrying a lot on his shoulders. I don't know, is Brian here today? Way to go, Brian. There he is. I don't know how he survived. But we worked hard to get some additional positions and to get some funding, and as I was walking out the door, we were in the process of hiring. How many people do we have? We have 4 now. We're getting there, right? We need more. But that was, again, one of those things. You can't do your job if you don't have the right number of people, the right people, and all the resources that you need. Another thing that we did make some huge leaps to success on, I think, was the Fire and Life Safety Division. We had, someone had mentioned previously, we work with a lot of other state agencies, and one of those is the Department of Finance. And most directors and most folks kind of cringe when the Department of Finance comes in to take a look at your operation. But we welcomed them, and we had a team of great people come in. And I know that my first meeting with them as they came in and we started kind of figuring out what our goals and objectives were, is I asked them to look under the hood. Come in, look at our program, look under the hood, and you tell us what you think we need or don't need. And it was a lengthy process. It took a lot of staff time. Chief Collins and her team at the time put a lot of time and energy into it, took them on field trips. And after a few months, their eyes started getting wider and wider and wider. It's like, holy smokes, you guys have to do this much? Why do you do this? Oh, well, because the law requires us to. And like halfway through, I think they said, well, we're going to write a BCP for you. And how many people did we get out of that first? Like 14 or something? And that was like before the report was done. That was, you need to get going on this now. And so that partnership, those relationships, that it's our job to get out there and maintain is critically important, and educating everybody else about what it is that we do and why we do it is a critical part of that. Second to last thing here, wildland, fire prevention engineering, that whole world. We started this. There was a ton of activity that had started several years before my time, but it really started ramping up with the fire prevention fee and grant funding and getting more involved in that. We had some laws passed that got us more involved in land use planning, getting out, our staff getting out, working with counties, helping them work on their general plans. Once again, building those relationships. But one of the things out of that entire program that I was really proud of was we developed some electronic tools to get out there and do defensible space inspections, and that expanded into damage inspections as a result of wildfires. And I think we were a victim of our own success because we started sending our deputies out to do DINS inspections, right? We were the DINS team on these major incidents. Then 2017 and 2018 happened, okay? 2018 was my last year. And it wasn't uncommon for us to deploy 80 to 100 employees to an incident so that they could spend weeks doing damage inspections. And it took a lot out of all of them. When you take that many people out of our operation, all the people that are left are doing their best to keep everything else running. And I just want to say thank you to all of you that were involved in all of that over the years, because you made it a success. Chief Pimlott loved it, too much, but he loved it. And that was very successful. I hope it's continuing. And the data that you collect through that process is invaluable, and I know will continue to be important as we look at future code development and things that can improve. So the last thing is fireworks. I wasn't asked what my position on fireworks was, thank goodness, because I probably wouldn't have been appointed or confirmed. That saga has continued for way back in the day when we used to collect them and dig a big pit out in the desert and blow them all up, and then that became unacceptable. And over the years, over the decades, my friends in the fire marshal's office have just beaten their head against the wall trying to get funding to deal with this gigantic 800-pound gorilla that's always on our plate. And it's expensive. It's considered hazardous waste. You can only deal with it a certain way. And we went through some processes. We worked with the fireworks industry, Dennis Matheson and his team. We worked with the governor's office. And we had come up with another potential solution. I know several others over the past years had also been tried. We got as far as into the state budget process, and I had to sit in front of a Senate, I forget what it was called, Senate Rules Committee, Budget Committee, whatever it was. And we thought it was a really good idea. It's kind of like when you go buy a tire or you go buy a mattress, person pays a little extra fee, and that money can go into dealing with illegal fireworks. Well, I had a senator kind of yell at me a little bit, accusing me of taxing, mom and apple pie to deal with this issue. Fast forward several months, pretty much right after or close to when I was going to retire, we were able to secure some funding. Initially, it was 1 year, or like $3.6 million or something like that. And then I got a call right as I was about ready to head out the door saying we're going to fund it ongoing. And so, is it still funded? Yes. So it still doesn't solve the illegal fireworks problem, but it helps keep the number of mini storage units that we have to rent to store that crap down to a minimum. So at any rate, enough of that. I just want to say thank you again for all the state fire marshal employees for being a huge part of my personal life, my career, people ask me, do I miss, going to work and all that? And I'm like, hell yeah. Hell no. Do you know where I live? But I miss the people. That's what you're going to end up missing if you haven't retired yet. You'll miss the people. You won't miss the politics. You won't miss all that, but you're going to miss the people. So keep those relationships going, and who knows, in your retired life, you're probably still going to see those people once in a while, right? So don't piss them off, right? Stay friends with them. Okay, so enough of me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. And last but not least, today, Chief Michael Richwine. And this doesn't include your acting services, but 2020 to 2022. I'm sure you can let us know the other ones.
I got a SAG award for that acting experience. Greetings. Contrary to your belief, I have not been here since the beginning of the Fire Marshal's office, 100 years. But dang near 35, 37 years, somewhere around there, I lost count. But it's good to see old friends and acquaintances and partners and stakeholders. And I just am really happy that you are all here to come and help us celebrate this centennial. Mike Richwine, State Fire Marshal. I started many years ago. And I just want to acknowledge Chief McMullen, because it was because of the public education unit and because of the State Fire Marshal Journal, I became interested in the office of the State Fire Marshal. I would go into our fire marshal when I worked for the Hanford Fire Department, way back when. I would go into the fire marshal's office and I would sit down and read the State Fire Marshal Journal, because it was full of information that I didn't know about, of things that were going on in the state. New laws, regulations, Arson and Bomb Division, their activities, what we were doing in fire prevention and enforcement, and so it really intrigued me, and so thank you for that. And I appreciate you hiring me. So. I'm just going to be candid here. The first time I met Chief McMullen, we went to his office to get sworn in. I think there was 9 of us. And we're all sitting there on the couch and in the chairs waiting for the boss to come in. And he comes flying in, and he's got some camera, some photographers with her. And I was like, holy crap, this is like the governor. Man, I was like, whoa. But anyways, my journey here, though, it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Jenny Krippner. And Jenny, thank you. Jenny Krippner was from the Visalia Fire Department, and she was assigned to the Hanford, Fresno, Visalia, Tulare County area. And I got a call from the fire marshal one day because he knew I was really interested in fire prevention, investigations, and training. And he said, hey, the fire marshal's in town. You ought to go over there and meet her. I go, okay. So I asked my captain. He said, hell no. And so went to the chief, and he said, okay, sure. So, no, just kidding. But I ended up meeting with Jenny, and we met a couple of times, and I shadowed her when she would come to town and do our HHS inspections of skilled nursing facilities. And basically, she would walk down the corridor, and she would knock on doors. She would close the door and knock on it, close the door and knock on it. And I'm going, what are you doing? She goes, making sure these are solid core doors. I can do this. So the rest is history. I talked to her about the job. She said, you should apply. I did, and I was assigned to West Covina. So I went down to West Covina, and I go, oh, my gosh, what am I doing? Nothing against West Covina. It's just it was culture shock coming from the valley. But as the state has cycles, they went into hiring freeze. And so I was told that I wasn't going to be hired for a while. So I went on about my life. And then I got a call again, and I was offered a job in San Leandro. Now, I'm a Hanford hick. San Leandro sounds like a really cool place. I'm thinking the beach. I'm just, this is going to be awesome. Well, San Leandro is right in the middle of the Bay Area, and it was a faster pace than I was used to. My first supervisor was Joe Garcia. I know he's here somewhere. Hey, Joe, thank you. You helped me get through the first year so I wouldn't get fired. Thank you very much. And also to Chief McMullen, the residential sprinkler trailer. I hauled that thing all around Lake Berryessa one night. I thought I was going to roll it into the lake. Man, I was scared to death. But that was a great visual, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to introduce residential sprinklers to people at fairs and other gatherings wherever we could. And those were the things we did. And let me just describe for you how life was as a Deputy State Fire Marshal back in the 1980s. Our work uniform was slacks, a sports coat, and a tie every day. You were to be professional, and you were to look professional and act professional. Well, that doesn't work when you got to crawl through attics in the middle of the afternoon making sure that the fire barriers are still intact. So we were issued coveralls. I drove a brown Chevy Citation with a magnet sign said State Fire Marshal on the side. I could take it off and throw it in the back. But I loved it. I didn't know any better. And so this was the way it was in the office of the State Fire Marshal. Chief Coleman comes along later, and there's this talk about integration into CDF. And so I was really interested in that. Coming from municipal fire department, it was a chance for me to reconnect back into the fire department. And I just knew that if we could merge into CDF, there would be so much more opportunity for myself, selfishly, to promote or to move around. And so thank you, Chief Coleman, for your innovation and the vision to have us merged in, and Chief Favreau as well, to have us merged in with CDF. It's been a great move. It probably saved our department many times over, because if you didn't know, there were several times when we had members of the legislature who got upset at us for one reason or another, and then they would sponsor legislation to do away with us. And at one point in our career, there was a bill that was passed that moved all of the responsibilities for healthcare facilities to OSHPD, Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development, and we lost. I can't remember how many deputies we lost in that move. 25? Yeah. So it was a significant blow. So, it's political, right? So I think being in CAL FIRE helped us to be able to become the fire prevention arm of CAL FIRE, and also the investigations, and also to boost the training programs as well. So it's been a great move. Chief Grijalva, thank you for promoting me to Division Chief. And thank you for the lessons that I learned from you about building these relationships. And I really appreciated your lessons about passion for the job. Finding people who have a passion and put them in that position, put them in an opportunity to work where they have passion, because they'll always want to come to work. And that was spot on. So thank you very much for that. And Dennis, thank you for the friendship, the many laughs that we've had over the years. We used to say this all the time: you can't make this stuff up. I mean, because it just comes at you and you're like, what? But thank you for that. Thank you also for your lessons on relationships. I mean, you had a great relationship with the governor's office and with Nettie, something that you worked really hard on, and it paid off huge for us in getting our positions filled and helping us to meet some of our mandates that have been hanging out there for so long. And to Tanya, oh my gosh, energy. Tanya, though, I learned, she is so smart. I mean, I learned a lot from her. And we traveled around in cars and trains and buses and airplanes, and it was a great experience. And she will never, ever fall asleep on you. I mean, she's just got that kind of energy going. And so I really appreciated working for her. I was really disappointed to see her leave when she did so in 2016. And then Kate, of course, let me just tell you a real quick story about her. I first met her at the Cedar Fire. I was working for Janet on Janet Upton, Team 5. She was the information officer. We had a crew burn over and a firefighter fatality. So Janet had to go work the media regarding the fatality, and she goes, "You got the fire." What? So, the biggest fire that we ever had, I can't remember, 2,700 homes lost or something like that. But Kate and I connected, and we, in a down moment, we found ourselves at the kitchen, nobody else around. And she told me, she goes, "You know what? We have to change the culture. We have to change the practice. We can't continue to fight these fires and spend millions and millions of dollars year after year after year. We've got to find a way that we can invest those dollars in preventing these fires in the future." And she started talking to me about wildfire preparedness, and started talking about home hardening, and started talking about increasing defensible space, and about fire planning and mapping. And I was just sitting there going, "This will never work. What are you talking about? This is never going to happen." But vision. Kate was a person of vision, and I really appreciated that and learned a lot from her regarding having a vision. And so I guess I was supposed to get up here and talk about the things that were accomplished. But it's only been 5 months since I left. Daniel went down my list very nicely, thank you, at the beginning of this. But, we continued the great work that Dennis started in building our staffing up so that we could meet our mandates. We hired architects to come in and work in our plan review division, and that really helped streamline some things and really, took us to another level, I think. And it was at the right time because we have so much state construction that's going on. Most recently, we completed the legislative swing space so that the legislature could move out of the Capitol and conduct their business there while they plan and begin the demolition of the annex. Is that still on track? All right. And so that wasn't political at all when we were talking about that planning process. But I think a couple of things. I'm back into what's the name of your division? Say it slow. Community Wildfire Preparedness Mitigation Division. Or thereabouts. One of the most significant things, other than, I forgot to mention this, state fire training. I spent many, many years there, many years of love working in state fire training, working with our retired annuitants, with our training staff and all the training officers to completely rebuild our training system because it was broken and people were looking for alternatives. And if we didn't act to change the way we were doing business, we wouldn't have a training program today. So I'm thankful for all of you who participated in that so that we could move that to the point to where we're accredited internationally for our firefighter program, and we're looking to increase that accreditation process. But back to community wildfire preparedness and mitigation. Did I get it? Okay. This, as a result of the many catastrophic fires, we had the legislature increasingly wanted to encroach into this space with the fire marshal's office and with CAL FIRE. And we decided we needed to go on the offensive. Rather than have the legislature dictate to us how we wanted to manage the program, why don't we propose, and we did this skillfully through our ledge office, why don't we propose through the governor's office a new division with a deputy director who's responsible for all of the wildland preparedness, defensible space, grants, subdivision review, fire plan, all of those programs rolled up into this division under the direction of another deputy director. And that's a significant change because there had only been one deputy director and then the fire marshal. And so now there are two, and we can manage that span of control much more effectively. And Daniel and his team are doing a fantastic job. We contracted with IBHS to do some testing on ember intrusion into homes, and focused on outbuildings and how fences can serve as a wick to ignite homes in a wildland fire. And that testing has proved to be very instrumental in how we are going to look at the developments of the future in the WUI. We also have formed a joint powers authority with the Office of Emergency Services to launch a pilot program for home hardening. We have 6 counties that we've targeted, and we're allocating funding to those counties so that they can allocate it to homeowners who are interested in replacing their siding, their glazing, their decking to help harden their homes against the threat of wildfire. And that one is a significant effort, and it's a collaborative effort with OES, the State Fire Marshal, and the Department of Insurance, because we want to make sure that, I'm talking like I still work there. It's a habit I'm trying to break. But we want to ensure that the insurance companies are going to recognize these efforts and to mitigate fire, and you're going to see a reduction, hopefully, or at least some stability in their insurance rates going forward. And in our pipeline safety division, we are now meeting all of our PHMSA required inspection days. It has been a very long time since we were able to do that, and I'm very proud of the work. Bob Gorham is here. Bob, you were the pioneer in this. Ben Ho. Ben, you helped to rebuild this division, and of course Jim, now the Assistant Deputy Director, are doing a fantastic job. So thank you, all of you, for the work you're doing. And they're really doing something cool now. Chief Hostler is leading preliminary efforts into carbon capture.
Carbon capture, CCS.
Thank you, CCS. You all knew that. It's basically capturing carbon out of the atmosphere and then condensing it and then transporting it through pipelines to storage underground in specific areas. And so we're on the leading edge of that. Jim is on the leading edge of that. And so I thank you very much for all you're doing there. So I think I've gone long enough. There are many other accomplishments, many other divisions. I'm looking at Greg, tall wood buildings that we brought into the code with mass timber. Of course, the great work, State Fire Training, Fire Engineering is really increasing our collaboration, increasing our turnaround time with, what's the name, GovMotus? GovMotus and the, I used to know this stuff, man. It's real bad. Time to go. But I have that passion. So, anyways, I'm going to end it there. I want to thank all of you. I want to thank all of our staff for all the work that you put into making this day happen. And thanks to all of you for being here today. And I'll turn it back over to Chief Hostler.
I know there's a lesson somewhere in all these discussions we just had. I think a very key one is passion, relationships, and family. So with that, I'm going to roll to Chief Daniel Berlant, and we want to thank you for your time. Chief?
Thank you very much, Chief Officer. Thank you very much for all of you to sit through hearing all the successes, hearing all the stories. It was fun for, I know, myself and the team to really be able to hear over the last 6 decades of state fire marshals, the progress that you've made, the challenges that you've had, but also some of the fun stories with the accomplishments. For our team, I really hope that you take back from what you've heard today, from some of the excitement and enthusiasm that not just our former state fire marshals, but also our former Office of State Fire Marshal staff members that are here. And I really hope that we have a good opportunity to dialogue with each other and use this as a learning tool for us to not repeat the same challenges, not have to fight the same battles, but as I said earlier, for us to stand on the shoulders of those who came before us over the last 100 years. I probably won't be here for the 200-year anniversary, but it's going to be our job now as the current OSFM staff to make sure that in 21, 23, I can't even do that math, and it's just a 1. 21, 23, that they are looking back on the work that we did and be able to champion on top of that. So I really want to thank Chief Coleman, Chief McMullen, Chief Favreau, Chief Matheson, Chief Richwine, Chief Grijalva, Chief Dargan, and Chief Hoover. Again, it is amazing to have truly 60 years worth of state fire marshals here with us in this room, and I really would encourage everybody to take the opportunity to hear from them. And I'll just end with, again, our team, our retired team, our stakeholders, our FPOs, our fire prevention officers from local government, our training officers, our industry, private industry leaders, and everybody in between. We are only as strong today as we are as a team. And so I thank you very much for making today a success. As we wrap up, and I'm now the person right before the bell rings for you to go get dessert. But I just really want to take an opportunity to acknowledge the partners in the Building Officials Association, the International Code Council, as well as a donation from Chief Hart here and others who helped make sure that we had the financial backing to be able to serve dessert and to have this facility. So our great friends at Cal Expo who provided us this through those contributions, but also Chief Collins, Jamie Allen from our team. Actually, there's a whole host, Kara Garrett, who really worked to make the ceremony today possible. Of course, we couldn't have had it without our host, Jim Hosser, and we couldn't have had it without our Centennial Committee led by Crystal Sujeski and Kara Garrett and about 20 other people who all made the logo that you see and everything that came into this 100-year celebration happen. So with that, thank you very much. Please have some dessert. We would love to take some photographs of our former state fire marshals and any other of our partners. So thank you.